Welcome to the 12th episode of my series exploring licensed prostitution in America. This series has a specific focus on the legal system that exists within Nevada, which allows sex workers and brothels to be licensed at a county level. Nevada stands as the only state in the United States with such a framework. In this episode, I have the privilege of speaking to who I think might just be one of the most famous, licensed, and legal sex workers in the United States, Alice Little. You're listening to the Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Each episode is available in audio, video, and transcript formats. To access your preferred format, simply check the episode description you're listening to. You'll find a link within that description that will direct you to my website where you can view the transcript and discover the platforms offering this episode in audio or video. If you're having trouble locating the episode description on your chosen platform, take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. There, you can easily locate the corresponding episode and access the audio, video, and transcripts. Additionally, you might find any links to any references that we make during the episode, allowing you to further explore the topics that were discussed. If you're not tuning in via Patreon, it's worth noting that you're hearing this episode after our loyal patrons. If you'd like to become a patron and support our show, visit thecolememo.com/Patreon. Once again, that's thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a fantastic way to contribute to my content, and it only costs $3 a month. However, one of the most valuable ways to support the show is entirely free. Simply subscribe to or follow my show. Leave a positive review from wherever you're listening from. Mark this episode as a favorite. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or post a review. Your engagement and support means the world to me. Today is December 25th, 2023, and it looks like that I originally recorded this conversation with Alice Little sometime in September of 2023. Enjoy the episode. Folks, I'm joined by Alice Little. Alice, please introduce yourself to my audience.
Hello, hello. My name is Alice Little. I am a legal sex worker, sex educator, and intimacy expert.
Yep. And for all those reasons, she fits right in here. So thank you for your time today. I think, and I hope this comes off as a compliment, I think you're one of the most famous sex workers and sex educators that I've ever sat down with. So,
well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, for folks that maybe didn't understand that sex work is legal, and well, frankly, there are multiple forms of sex work, as we've talked about on the show. But in case people miss that, can you fill in the dots for our listeners?
Yes. So sex work itself is kind of an umbrella term that describes lots of different professions that all fall within different auspices. I happen to be a legal full-service sex worker through the Nevada Brothel system. Here within the United States, we actually have legal brothels. However, they are limited to specific counties only within the state of Nevada. These brothels have county by county legislation rather than statewide legislation. And so the rules at each individual location oftentimes are different as a reflection of the different county legislations and laws.
And before one of the things I want to cook up for you, because one of the point of this series, talking to sex workers and not only sex workers, but we've spoken to people that are managers at brothels and everything else. owners. We recently spoke to Bella. So folks, check that out. The whole point is that we're trying to say that sex work should be legal. And so one of the questions I'll ask you at the end is like, if we were to copy and paste into other states, what are some things you might, or we might consider? Sorry, stumbling on my question there. So that's what we'll work up to. But I guess I wanted to, before we close with that, because that's hopefully the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to that, I guess I wanted to ask, how long have you been in the sex industry, legal sex industry in Nevada?
Well, I first started working within the Nevada brothels back in 2015. Prior to that, however, I was actually involved in the intimacy industry as a BDSM and sex educator. I was traveling around to different events on the weekends and educating people on how to have safe threesomes, how to negotiate your first kink experience. Here's what floggers are and how not to hurt yourself with them. All sorts of different things.
Gotcha. And like, when did this start for you? When did you get into the, like, again, as I say, or as you said, the sex industry is very broad, but yeah, generally speaking, like, when did you start this profession?
I would say it probably started at the age of 18. I obtained a job working at the front desk of a private BDSM dungeon in New York City. My college roommates had parents that owned the dungeon, so I kind of bullied them and elbowed them into hooking me up with a job, and eventually managed to gain a world-class education through also being in charge of setting up their educational structure and scheduling all the classes, which meant I then got to attend all the different classes. Eventually, I became an educator myself and started to travel around locally and nationally, and eventually I started to present internationally as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So when did you get into Nevada's sex industry? And if I could ask also how, like, how
So
did it
it
catch your eye?
actually started because of my sex education background. It was at an event where a fellow educator shared with me her experience at one of Nevada brothels, and it really intrigued me. I remember watching this TV show, the HBO Cat House series, back when I was younger, and well, I will pull it up on my phone, I look it up online, and lo and behold, that's the place. So I decided to apply and started my journey and never looked back ever since.
Awesome. Awesome. And where did you start, if I could ask?
So I started up north. There are dozens upon dozens of different ranches. The
Hmm.
easiest way to explain it is that there is a family of properties known as the Bunny Ranch properties, which at one time was up to 7 different brothels that were owned by Dennis Hoff. And I started at one of his locations and worked at one of his locations all the way through the pandemic before making a switch to a southern location, the historic Chicken Ranch brothel, which is where I work today.
Oh, cool. Cool. The Chicken Ranch. Yeah, definitely historic. We recently sat down and watched the Chicken Ranch documentary, which was really crazy to
Oh,
see. I don't
God.
know if you've seen it.
Yes, what a treat. And it truly is a taste of history. The industry is almost nothing like that anymore. However, I love reflecting back on where we came from. It's so beautiful to me that we've encapsulated that little slice of life as to what things were like at one point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's when it all started back in, what is it, the 80s?
You know, the Chicken Ranch brothel actually started all the way before that back in LaGrange, Texas. I want to say it was back in like the 50s or 60s, back when there were brothels all across America. And it was one of the final brothels until eventually it was closed.
Yeah. So you were at the Hoff brothels for quite a while. Then you segued to the Chicken Ranch. Was there any like particular reason that you segued to the Chicken Ranch, or?
Well, this little thing happened in March of 2020 that kind of had a little big impact upon the entire world,
Sure.
and in particularly those of us that work within the intimacy industry. Of course, I'm talking about the pandemic, which unfortunately shuttered the entirety of the Nevada brothel industry for the first and only time in history. We are open 24/7, 365, and we don't close. We are open, period, end of sentence. So this was the first time that the entire industry had ever been shuttered. So this was incredibly shocking. And during that time, many ladies, such as myself, took a look at our lives and how we wanted to do things moving forward. And I ended up getting involved in content creation through OnlyFans and managed to pick up a nice little following through that platform, which allowed me to purchase a farm in Colorado. Now it makes more sense for me to travel to work a limited tour, and then return home rather than living near my place of work and being available 24/7. That just doesn't make any sense for me at this point in my career. All of my guests make appointments with me anyway, so I don't need to be available on demand anymore.
Yeah. And forgive me, most all of the workers I spoke with, I made sure to give them time at the front to say where they could find them online. You're once again famous enough. I feel like people can just search your name, but did you want to plug your website or anything?
Absolutely. My website is thealicelittle.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Cool. So again, my apologies for waiting later into the show to do that, but I'll put it in the show intro. So
Well, thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you said I saw, just did a little bit of research, and I'm not completely plugged into the Nevada scene, but I saw that you actually helped to lead the charge to kind of reopen the brothels. Am I correct in remembering that? Because it was a few weeks ago that I looked this stuff up.
I did. I sued the governor of Nevada, and I was the
Whoa.
only one brave enough to do so.
Whoa. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of
How that
course.
went?
So, at this point in time, we are well into 2021. Vaccine round number one has already come out. It's already been out. It's old news. In
Mhm.
Nevada, the casinos are open. People are drinking, eating, and smoking maskless. However,
Right.
Nevada has one industry that was still shuttered, my industry, the Nevada brothels. And I thought that was a load of nonsense. So I decided to roll up my sleeves and do something about it.
Nice. And did it go your way, or did he just ultimately like lift it, or how would you characterize the change? Did you feel like you had an effect?
This is where things get very nuanced and interesting
Sure.
when it comes to brothel legislation. Had any brothel owner stepped up to the plate and joined the lawsuit, I likely would have been incredibly successful in my pursuit. However, Nevada brothel workers have a license that is under the Nevada brothel license. So we have a work card to work at a specific location. And so essentially the justification was is that as a worker, I didn't have legal standing, whatever the precedent is, to say that I am being hurt in some way because I
Hmm.
don't physically actually own a brothel.
Interesting. Why do you think that brothel owners wouldn't have joined you?
Money and finances, frankly speaking. And again, this is where things get very interesting. From my understanding, many of the PPP loans that were granted had since been rescinded. However, many brothels qualified for PPP and a small business association loans
Yeah.
based off of other LLCs and S corps that they had, such as an accounting office, a restaurant, whatever company that may be affiliated with the ranch, but not the sex industry directly. They were able to get money. So they weren't necessarily worried about reopening in the brothel in any sort of hurry or hustle because they were doing okay. Whereas us, the individual workers, we received no such protections. We were not eligible for SBA loans. We were not eligible for a paycheck protection program. We didn't receive really much of any assistance from the government at all because we are independent contractors, not employees. And so we simply lost our incomes overnight, literally just like that.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And it just seems crazy, yeah, that other brothel owners wouldn't join you, especially if it would have helped the standing of your case. But honestly, my experience so far has been that they just seem to be a nervous bunch, a private
Yeah.
bunch. Like Bella was the only one I could really get to come on the show with me and
Yes.
just talk,
And it's understandable. You figure, as a brothel owner, they have a tremendous weight and responsibility on their shoulders, which is the weight of the brothel license. If they mess up and they lose that license, they don't just lose their money. Now they have cost all of their employees, all of those ladies, their workplace, and the opportunity to be financially successful. So they need to think about things such as, do I really want to cause contention with the governor of Nevada when I'm not sure if he's going to be up for re-election? Do I really want to take that man on directly? Or as frankly speaking, as someone who does not own a brothel, what is Steve Sisolak going to do to me directly? I mean, it's not like he's going to turn around and come against my brothel. I don't own one. It's me, just little me hanging out, doing my spicy David and Goliath thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did it, though. It, frankly speaking, called a lot of necessary attention to the plight that sex workers were facing. Thankfully, not long after the lawsuit was concluded, we did receive a date for the reopening of the brothels, though it sure would have been great to receive that a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious. Were there kind of ridiculous guidelines to coming back? Like I did see something about you did require temperature, so I'm not saying that's ridiculous, but were there's silly things? Because there were some silly things. You remember when you went to the restaurant and they were like, well, you have to have your mask on when you walk to the table, but when you sit down, you can take it off because the virus, it'll be
all sorts of ridiculous nonsense and silly things if you do the Macarena and the hokey pokey and turn yourself around, you're going to be A-okay. I mean, I am here for vaccinations. I am here for safety. Yeah. The reality is at a certain point, we had vaccinations. We had a pretty good understanding of what was going on. We understood who was at risk, what mitigations needed to be assumed. For example, everybody within the brothel industry returning to work after the pandemic ended up being vaccinated. That was something that everybody agreed upon because we all shared common risk. Hey, we're all in this ship together. We all share space. We all literally are in this house together. We need to be collaborative and cooperative here. Let's work together to make this work. And everybody was much so on board, though, of course, as all things are with the government, they're like, give us a little thing about how you're going to reopen and what that looks like. And it's goodness, I don't even think you guys know how you're going to reopen. But one thing I know for sure is that if there are people drinking and smoking in the casinos, there are certainly people having sex in the hotel rooms of those casinos. Right. Why in the world are you keeping the legal brothel industry closed? Why?
Yeah. And on a slightly different topic, what kind of got me interested in legal sex work is the parallels I see between the legalization of cannabis and the legalization of sex work. And I think they both come from a good place, right? Where it's you shouldn't regulate behavior that doesn't hurt anybody, right? It's my choice as an American. That's what I thought this country was all about, this freedom espousing country, right? And so that's what got me fascinated in this. And one of the similarities I feel that you have to face. So I've had people on my show that are prohibitionists. They do this group. They're called Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And they're a really, really well-known group if you look them up. And they're in Washington, D.C. every day. and they think marijuana should be illegal. I recently, and obviously I disagree, right? But I speak with
Same.
these people, and I like to debate these people. And I bring this up because a lot of times I don't feel like those people are coming from a place where they're arguing in good faith. Like I feel like they're just kind of
Yes.
making shit up to try to like make their point instead of like acknowledging the actual reality of where it
I
is, you know?
I feel that in my heart and soul. Back in 2018, there was a small religious minority that wanted to criminalize Nevada brothels in Lyon County, and I spearheaded the Lyon County Freedom Campaign to defend the Nevada brothels and came up against a few individuals who wanted to literally in a town hall debate me as to the pros and cons of brothels, and their defense was this here Bible, which
Wow.
religion is great and all, and I'm here for it. But like, you do you, you do me, you practice your faith. I'm gonna do
Also,
my
the
thing.
Bible's a bad book to hold up to justify the illegality of prostitution because the Bible encourages like, in some texts it encourage like it's stories of a man giving up his daughter to a village, like
There's a lot.
so there's a lot
There's
of
a
stuff,
lot of
but yeah.
things.
But
Yeah,
that's
you
actually
know.
why I brought it up is that's where I was working to. You read my mind. I was going to ask you about your experience, and I just wanted to commend you because I feel like you're like a warrior in that realm where like I'm a fan of a lot of people in the cannabis realm, but if I were to name like an advocate in the sex work realm, I'd be like Alice Little is on the list, so
Well, thanks.
yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about that experience. What was that like? And I'm sure that it hasn't gone away. Was that the latest one you said in what was it, 2018 or
Yeah,
2019?
so it never stops. There are always groups working against intimate pleasure between consensual adults, whether that is the censorship of pornography, the criminalization of sex work, the erasure of boobs from the internet and women's bodies being censored. Whatever it so may be, we see contention against intimacy and intimate relationships at every single twist and turn, which is ironic and hypocritical when you then turn around and see the things that are permissible when it comes to celebrity culture. But any which way,
Yeah.
I I strongly feel that there needs to be more conversation where we are willing to confront anti-sex work, anti-intimacy individuals, and really be willing to question their intentions of their debates. That is something that I personally have tried to do whenever I come across someone who is against this. I literally try to call into question, like, well, why is that your opinion? Fantastic. Well, why does your moral opinion have weight upon what I do with my body and what I do professionally?
Yeah.
How would you feel if, say, somebody who is a vegan declared that because of their ethical concerns around meat in this country, therefore nobody can have a McDonald's hamburger or any hamburger ever again? I mean, this country would be in an uproar. They would lose their minds if somebody tried to take away their like hamburgers and hot dogs. Like we can't have that. But we do have states that are taking away people's pornography. Multiple states now have Pornhub.com blocked as a consequence of various legislation that is designed under the guise of protecting citizens and minors that unfortunately truly exist to further minimize access to adult content and minimizes the presence and visibility of sex workers online.
Yeah, and it's all based on this assumption that like women aren't able to make their own decision. I feel like none of you know what I mean? It seems like it's
Yeah,
based on this assumption that all of these women were like swindled into this almost. Like
absolutely. An empowered woman choosing to do something with her body that they feel too inhibited to do. How dare she? We can't have that happen. Women being financially successful in an industry where women are uniquely more successful than men. Oh, I don't know how we feel about that as a society. It's very interesting when we talk about sex work and Nevada brothels and the financials of it. The reality is the highest paid individuals within the industry aren't the brothel owners. It's probably like some of the women. Because sure, brothel owners get 50% of everyone's everything. And then they have to pay taxes on all that. And then they have to pay for the brothel license and all their employees and their lights. And I mean, gosh, some women individually are able to earn as much as a small rural brothel, an entire location, individually on their own. To give you an idea of the sheer range of income possibilities that exist within just the Nevada brothel system and truly within sex work as well. There is absolutely survival sex work, but let's not for like 1 second pretend that there are not people that are truly thriving within sex work and making themselves very successful careers.
Yeah. There's survival sex work. There's also just like survival work. Like, does it, like, I guess we're choosing, like, it's interesting. We're ascribing moral values to the choice and how we're going to be exploited. And I'm not saying sex work is exploitive. I'm just saying all work is exploitive.
Yeah. All labor under capitalism is really exploitative at the end of the day. We don't really have an ideal system of labor and equitable exchange of how we barter, trade, and sell goods and services. That is an unfortunate reality of capitalism and America. And not a single one of us individually is going to magically change that system. And criminalizing sex work certainly is not going to change that system in any sort of way other than causing direct harm to sex workers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And, just to underscore a point that you made a moment ago, I was joined by an individual that said, that taught me that, historically, actually, sex workers have always been have always been able to transcend their class. Now, hear me out. What I mean by that is that women back in the day didn't have all of the same rights as we had, like the right to vote, for example. The right to maybe even learn how to do certain things. I don't know, but like sex workers were able to transcend that. Like they were ahead of their time. They knew how to read. They, like things like that. Which I learned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the madams in some of the Wild West towns were some of the most influential individuals within those towns, not to mention some of the most affluent as well.
Yeah. And I guess to round out my point, it harkens back to a point you were making where it's like, that's maybe why some people are trying to like pull you down. Like that's what was happening back then. They're like, whoa. We can't have somebody like a woman doing that. Like bring her down to her level type of thing, right?
Morality and the idea of in someone's place plays a huge part of sex work. The idea of judgment and being able to look down upon. And unfortunately, even within sex work, sometimes there's this kind of like built-in hierarchy where people have this misconception that some types of sex work are better than other types of sex work and try to create this kind of internalized pyramid of what's the best sex work versus what's the worst sex work. And it's an umbrella. It doesn't work like that. It's like more of a Venn diagram with lots of overlap because most of us do a lot of things. Like I do OnlyFans, and then I'm also at the ranches, and then I also do custom content, and then I also do video experiences for people. I mean, it is endless.
Yeah. I'm curious, can you speak on some of the workers that we spoke to that have left, let's just say some of the places that you've mentioned they've mentioned they've left because of like culture issues. Did you experience anything like that? You know?
Yes. The culture of a location is incredibly important when it comes to where someone is able to work long term. A harmonious, peaceful work environment that's collaborative, not cooperative, certainly I feel is the correct solution. I feel that communication is best done through words rather than screaming at people. And there are better ways to communicate that don't involve swearing at people, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, and I was even told, and Alice, forgive me, I was even told like, something that happened to you. Somebody told me off the record that somebody like poured coffee on your laptop or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah, I was on a booking and then somebody sabotaged my laptop. Oh, yeah. I mean, just the wildest things, the most wild things.
And you're kind of like, I'm not trying to like gas you up or anything, but you are an exception in many ways. And I'm just curious, one of the things that we heard about is sabotage of people that do really well like you. Um, have you experienced that in like multiple levels or multiple ways? Like one of the craziest ways I heard about was somebody getting Nair put in their shampoo, and I was like,
Oh,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ, that sounds like a college dorm trick, except horrible, you know?
Yep. Um, for myself, it's all about focus. Like, am I going to focus on negativity or positivity? And frankly speaking, I'm just too busy to worry about what other people are saying or doing or thinking. I'm not focused on what anybody else is doing. I'm doing my own thing. Like, if anything, the more negativity that comes my way, the more haters that come my way. Thank you for being a dedicated and loyal fan. I appreciate your attention. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly
I,
you've liked and subscribed.
right. And pay, preferably, right? Throw
Yeah,
your
watch. I mean, if you hate me, enjoy watching me. I mean, like, it almost fuels me, I guess. I don't know. Like, I guess I'm motivated by the idea that there's all these people that hate the idea that somebody is a successful legal sex worker and has built a career out of this and is so enthusiastic and open to talking about it that they would like gather up Christian cyber terrorists and try to take down my website. No, this happened. This
Whoa.
really happened. Like, somebody tried to DDoS my website through a Christian cyber terrorist organization. It was really special. Like,
You're
that tells me, I'm like, ooh, they're
yeah,
paying
you're somebody.
attention. Let me be louder. Let me be even more ostentatious in that case. Like,
That's crazy, Alice. That's
oh no,
insane.
it's absolutely wild. Let me tell you, back in 2018, there was a period of time in which I would have to have a friend pick me up from work or meet me in a random parking lot so I could get into her vehicle and then she could drive me home because there were people from the local church that were trying to follow me home.
Oh
They were
wow.
so ridiculous. They literally had the church bumper sticker on their vehicle and they would use the same like 3 or 4 vehicles in rotation. They were not very clever.
That's insane. I wonder why they wanted to find out where you live. That seems
Uh,
that's scary.
Yeah, stalking and harassment is a tremendous issue for sex workers, particularly at the time I lived very close to where I was working. For that to be exposed would have put me in a significant amount of danger. There are certainly crazy people out there that would do harm to
Yeah.
me or harm to my pets, and I have no interest in that. At one point, I actually moved during all of this. There was concerns around my safety and somebody stalking and harassing and trying to like use social engineering to figure out where I lived. And it was really traumatic, to be frank. It was not a fun time.
Yeah. I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's pretty crazy.
It was a interesting experience at the same time. I certainly don't regret it.
Yeah. So and I am not trying to get you to like talk shit about anybody. I'm just honestly asking you. You did not leave because of you didn't leave like what did you say? But I've always heard it referred to as like the Hoff brothels or the Hoff
Yeah.
estate. You didn't leave that because of like culture issues. Like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
I mean, they were already closed at the time, so technically I was already gone. And I
Oh, true, true.
I
Yeah.
mean, so technically I was already gone at the same time. Let's just say that it was written in the stars, and I very much so recall pausing and looking around and gathering up all of my belongings, despite the fact that we were only supposed to be there for like, we're closing for a week to stop the curve. Remember that?
Yeah.
LOL, how funny. So like I remember packing up all my stuff and being like, I'm just gonna get this all just in case. I got a feeling.
Yeah.
I got it.
I'm asking these questions because I feel like this is the only bad thing I've heard about the sex industry. Like, this isn't anything that I think should make it illegal. Culture is totally addressable. I'm
Oh, it
asking, you know what I mean?
absolutely is. And frankly speaking, that's where the conversation really comes into what happens next. Where do we go from here? What is the ideal system? What should legislation and structure look like for sex work? Should there be legislation around sex work? Is it beneficial to have legislation? There's a lot of nuance that goes into this that is really, really hotly debated, and it's really interesting.
Yeah. What do you think on that subject? Like,
So, here in America, due to the way that our system of legislation is written and the way that banking functions under capitalism, sex workers, in my personal opinion, benefit most from a combination of decriminalization and legalization. We need decriminalization to protect the people that are most marginalized, period, end of sentence. Decriminalization has to come first. We know that decriminalization works. It allows us to find sex trafficking victims and get them helped. It allows us to keep minors out of the industry by removing that criminal penalty. It also allows sex workers to be able to reach out to police for assistance if they're being
right.
violated, rather than being arrested with a crime simply for selling intimacy. That makes no sense
Hmm.
at all whatsoever. So we need to decriminalize this industry. And then we need to talk about legalization structures and what that ideally looks like. Legalization needs to serve the industry. And what is the industry of sex workers? Primarily, not exclusively, but primarily cisgender females. That is the overwhelming majority of people that work within the brothel, or not within the brothel industry, within the sex work industry as a whole, like nationally. Sure,
Hmm.
there's some men. Yes, there's absolutely trans people. The majority are cis women that we are talking about here. So we need legislation that is going to specifically serve the population of sex workers in America and is designed around their specific needs, wants, and desires. So by this, I mean need. We need safety. We need to be able to bank. We need to have that protection. Right now, sex workers, even legal sex workers like myself, are at risk of having our banks closed because banking is a federal system and legislation is at a state level. My bank account can be closed at any point in time and has been closed. I pay my taxes, well, plenty. I mean, six figures in taxes some years. And let me tell you, it made no difference at all whatsoever. They still closed my account. That tells me that we need some sort of legislative protection. We need something written to guarantee us access to financial systems, because that is the only way that we are able to build generational wealth to be able to get ourselves ahead. You need access to banking. That's essential under capitalism. We need that. And without some form of legalization, it's very, very, very tricky to get that.
You just taught me another parallel between the cannabis industry
Oh
and
yeah,
the
the
sex industry.
banking.
Yeah,
Yes.
banking. Like, there's a huge push for safe banking at the federal level for cannabis.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it is unbelievable. It is so incredibly challenging. Let me tell you, I mean, it is such a challenge.
I
such a
didn't even know that.
challenge.
Do you have to like be careful about who you bank with? Oh,
Careful about what I do. Everything strictly carefully and intentionally designed. It is unbelievable the amount of stress and stigma that goes into the financial concerns of sex workers. It's ridiculous. It's probably one of our biggest liabilities right now as an industry is our financial liability in the sense that we do not have security in terms of legislative banking protections.
yeah. Sorry, my internet cut out, I think, in there for a second. But yeah, that's insane. Like I said, I did not realize there was another parallel to the cannabis industry. Well, I'm curious what else. So what else is there to that legalization topic? Because I've heard, and if you even go to the Wikipedia page, which I don't have it pulled up right now, but off the top of my head, I can pull it up. Like one of the criticisms of the Nevada sex market is that it's like this idea that, and this is actually why I fell in love with the idea of not only legal cannabis but legal sex. It's this idea that it's like this liberal, cool hippie movement that's like acknowledging that humans can make this choice. And I guess one of the criticisms of the Nevada sex market is that it kind of puts this power differential between the owner and the sex worker.
Yes. Oh
And
God, yeah.
yeah, can you speak on that? Because I feel like that's the only thing that I've heard that is, and again, that's not,
Oh
I still
yeah.
don't think that's an argument against it, but it's kind of accurate, I guess.
No, it's very nuanced and complicated. So let's start by dialing it back and talking a little bit more about how brothels exist within Nevada. Like I mentioned earlier, they only exist within very specific counties, and those counties dole out a specific number of licenses. Those licenses are all grandfathered. There's no new licenses issued. So if I want to open up a brothel, I can't. There is no new license available to me. I have to obtain an existing brothel license from somebody else by buying their business, an existing brothel location, because the license is also tied to the location. They're married together. So you need the license and the location in order to open up a business. This results in there being no clear pathway for legal sex workers to ever become brothel owners. Unless I manage to save quite literally millions of dollars of liquid assets, there's really no clear financial pathway for me to be able to then turn around and own a brothel. It is so prohibitively expensive that there is this severe income differential between the brothel owners and, of course, the sex workers. Now, like I said, some sex workers absolutely are able to individually make as much as some small rural brothels entirely on their own. That is an exception, not the rule. We're talking about the top 0.001% of the industry, maybe 3 to 5 out of the several hundred individuals are making that kind of elite level of income. And that's not always consistent income over every week, month, year. It varies. It is a very highly varied industry, whereas brothel ownership, of course, offers more stability in the sense that you have multiple workers all individually working and making money. And so you have a little bit more of like a differential, whereas it's me, myself, and I am how I make money. It isn't like me and several clones of me all working appointments at the same time, whereas the brothel owner doesn't even have to necessarily be present at the brothel to be making money. It's passive income. Whereas for sex workers, of course, it's active income. So there's, of course, lots of nuanced differences. And that's not to say that all brothel owners are bad or that brothel owners in general are bad. It's just important to acknowledge the fact that there is that financial and power differential within play, within the system, which isn't surprising considering the fact that the industry itself was legislated in the 1970s. And boy, howdy, was legislation ever so slightly skewed to support and favor men at that point in time.
Right. As somebody described it, it seems like the licenses are only meant to protect the owner, and not so much even maybe even the employee or the sex worker themselves.
Correct. We are very much so left on our own. Both the employee and the sex worker are just kind of like, we're just there. But the brothel owner, of course, kind of is like protected, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, and we received two voicemails. I felt like this was the perfect time to reference one of them. I was gonna play it, but I can't play. I'm having trouble getting it to toggle and play. But one of the questions they had was like tips or tricks, or tips or tricks. I read the transcript and they were saying that they were considering getting into Nevada's sex industry. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things I felt that was important to bring up at this point, since we're talking about power differential and things that I think women should be, or people getting into this industry should just be aware of. One of the things that I learned through this is, first of all, like all the clothes you can get, people that are listening and considering getting into the industry, you can write them off on your taxes, correct? Right?
It,
Or is that a
yes,
dicey question? Sorry.
yes, and I'm not an accountant. It is very important to have a differential between your work wardrobe and your personal wardrobe. As my
Sure.
accountant put it, if it is something that you are wearing non-professionally, like a pair of sneakers, you can't write that off. It really has to be like, this is
For your
my
work.
work wardrobe. This is my personal wardrobe. To give you an idea, my clothing is literally in separate closets. Like, it is
Mm.
very much so like differential and divided. And it is that way for a lot of things. For example, makeup. You're supposed to have your personal makeup and your professional makeup. Nails. You can write off press on nails, but it can be challenging to write off like acrylic nails because they're attached and you're supposedly then receiving the benefit of having those nails all the time, even though you're really doing it for work. Like, it's challenging to write off on your taxes. You
Sure.
have to prove, like, no, I got these and then I did a photo shoot. See, it matches my outfit. These are specifically a work related expense, sort of thing.
How about this tip? Get an accountant.
Oh
Getting
my
into
God, get an accountant. Jesus Christ. You have no idea how challenging, nuanced, and problematic it is because you are an independent contractor. That means you are doing all of it on your own. No one is holding anything for you. And don't screw it up, or you're going to be in a whole world of hurt.
yeah. Yeah. And on that end, one of the things you mentioned earlier was like the 50% that's of every earning, but some people that we spoke to like even kind of said, you could almost consider it 75% because you got to pay room, board, obviously food too, stuff like
Yep.
that.
Room, board, food, transportation, cost of toys, lingerie, the cost of doctoring. We have a quarterly license that is $150 4 times a year that we have to pay. We have a business license. We have taxes, insurance. Yeah, we don't have health insurance unless we pay for that ourselves, which is, of course, extremely pricey on the private market. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount of expenses that we spend. It is a very, very expensive industry to get into if you are financially struggling. I don't recommend blowing your last few dollars to get involved in this industry. You need to come into this with a little bit of padding and savings because if this isn't for you, you want to be able to turn around and walk away and not have to like earn your plane ticket home. Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't do that.
Right. And thank you for addressing that. That was going to be my next question. Some women have found that this is something where, I feel like the experience you had is ideal, right? You go, you have a really good experience, you make a good amount of money, and you're able to, live off of that. But some women we've heard, and again, this isn't a knock. It's some people just don't do well. Like I've had jobs that I don't do well at, right? So it's again, I don't think this is an argument against legalization, but they've talked about how I came here, I was planning for my future, and then all of a sudden I got stuck in what they describe as like this vortex of debt because of they end up having to try to pay themselves out. And like you say,
Mm.
buy their plane ticket home. Because these, and maybe this is another tip that you can give, these brothels are out in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like you have like a huge traffic influx.
I mean, middle of nowhere is really perspective. It depends on the location. I
Sure.
mean, you could be an hour and a half from Vegas, but I mean, it's a desert. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a challenge. You need to be financially responsible getting into this industry. You are responsible for flying yourself there, for dressing yourself, for having your work supplies. You're responsible for answering your emails, for marketing yourself. You need to have a laptop. You need to be able to answer your emails. It really helps to have social media presence. Pictures are everything in this industry. You need to be able to afford nice pictures or already have gone out of your way to have nice photos taken of yourself. I mean, it's a tremendous, tremendous investment.
Yeah. And that's what I was getting at. Thank you. Thank you. What I was getting at, you're true. You're right. Cause I did visit the bunny ranch and it is near, I thought this was funny. I got a picture, a really cool picture. It's near a dispensary, a gun shop, and then there's three other brothels. And then you can see the bunny ranch in the background. So
Yep.
it's not in the middle of nowhere. But I guess what I'm saying is that it's not like it's in Vegas. It's definitely not in Vegas, right? That's kind of
No,
part of the law.
it is not legal in Vegas. There are no
Correct. Or
brothels in
Reno, right?
Vegas.
Or Reno,
Or
correct?
Reno. No.
Yeah. So they are in rural areas, like you say. So I guess like I say, where I was coming from is, yeah, you really got to market yourself. You got to get people to come into the door because it's just maybe not always high volume, you know?
It's true. People think they're going to just suddenly start working and all of a sudden they show up and money just gets handed to them. And it just is not like that at all. Maybe the lucky girl every once in a while literally walks in and makes a ton of money just magically, luckily. But like most of the time, it's hard work, dedication. You're building a clientele over a period of time. You have to think about the implications of being a legal sex worker. Are you putting your name, or I should say, are you putting your face on the internet with a fake name? And are people are then going to be like, wait, hold on, I know her real name. I'm going to go online and expose her to her family or something. Are you at risk of something like that? Can you really have your face out in this industry? Is that a risk you're able and willing to take? Because something like that, I mean, it's a risk. It's really important. And that's not just Nevada brothels, that's any form of sex work. You really, 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 really need to consider before you get involved with it in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Do you worry about that at all? Like your family? Well, I mean, I feel like your family's got to know at this point,
Oh
right?
God, everybody knows. Everybody knows. Random strangers are like, "Oh my God, are you Alice Little?" I'm like, "Shh, maybe I'm Batman. I got
Yeah.
my
You should
sunglasses on." I'm just like,
just be like, who's Alice Little? But
"Oh my God." I
right? You should just
like
do that.
that. Oh
Like,
my God,
what?
tell me about her.
But do you worry about people like, I'm just assuming Alice Little is not your real name. Do you still
No,
worry
God,
about
no. It is a stage name. Frankly speaking, I am not worried about it in the slightest bit. At all whatsoever. Where I am, I have an extraordinary amount of security and really hope nobody is ever foolish enough to test my home. That would
yeah.
be really bad for them.
What do you think that the future of, and I want to be mindful of your time. Are you good on time as we wrap
Yeah,
up?
we are good
Um,
to go.
cool. All right. I've just got like a few more questions for you off the top of my head. What do you think the future of, and I know that this can change day by day and it's such a big question, but we were talking about legalization and I agree decriminalization is first and foremost. That's another parallel to cannabis. I think that comes before legalization in many instances. Like you say, first and foremost, it needs to not, people need to not go to jail for making the choice to engage in these activities, right? And
Yes.
then let's talk about legalization, okay? Where you can
Yeah.
legally procure. What do you
Mhm.
think? What, yeah, I feel like I kind of spun us off into some specific questions and tips and stuff, but what do you think ideally is the way to go? I mean, I want to start it off, maybe agree or disagree. Do you think like kind of open market on licensing? There shouldn't be the why the fuck are there limitations on licensing in Nevada, right? That seems silly. It's like, and
I
you have to
mean,
buy it at the
it
same
seems,
property. Like you
it
just,
seems silly, and at the same time, we don't want a brothel everywhere in the same way that we don't necessarily want a cannabis dispensary everywhere. It makes sense that there are certain limitations on where we want these things located. That makes perfect sense to me. Not that they should be shuttered away to the outskirts of town in a hidden secret red light district that's all the way beyond the edge of town. Like, that's
okay.
silly.
Instead of for sorry to cut you off. Instead of so alcohol and cannabis, it's usually 1,500 feet. What about for brothels? It's like 6,900 feet from a school,
Like that. I
right?
like that. I like it.
Anyways,
Yes,
um,
absolutely. But yeah, I feel like we can have some reasonable limitations. Also, I feel like the ideal model is akin to that of New Zealand, where we have decriminalization and legalization with both brothels, small brothels in the form of co-op groups, and true independent work where an individual has their own license and truly just works by themselves. It gives workers the full gambit of options for them to choose how they want to work, where they want to work, and who they want to work with or for, which is the most ethical way of doing things, is having a market that has lots of options. Freedom of choice, of course, benefits the worker, not so much brothel owners. At the same time, I certainly believe that there is a place and a real value and need for places like brothels, even in New Zealand, where people can just work through co-ops or just work independently. Brothels still exist. Clearly, there is a desire to have these safe havens where you can come luxuriate, have this escape, get away, be fully immersed in this beautiful, safe environment where you can have one or more beautiful ladies tending to your needs. I mean, what's not to enjoy about that space? There's nothing wrong with brothels. There's nothing bad about brothels. It's just give us more options too. We want our cake and we want to eat it too.
yeah. And to get just a little granular, would a good example be like, and this is just another similarity I thought of between the Illinois cannabis industry and Nevada sex market. You're licensed to work at one specific location. So if you decide, fuck it, fuck this place, I'm gonna go to the place across town or something, hypothetically, you couldn't just do that day. Like with a hair license, for example, you could be cutting your hair in your own booth, and then you could say, fuck it, I'm going to work for Supercuts or something
Yep,
like
no
that.
big deal.
But with sex
Nope,
work, it's not like that. Is that correct?
nope. I would have to pay another license fee, even within the same quarter, to work at another brothel.
So maybe like a universal licensing. Do you think that's a good proposal going forward? Is we
Yeah,
consider? Yeah.
that's certainly a good start. I also feel like quarterly licensing. Some counties are yearly. My county is quarterly. It's excessive. It's
Mm.
ridiculous. I mean, let's just be real. It's another way to extort additional fees from sex workers by charging us 150 4 times a year. Like, just raise the cost of the license and just let us go in there once. We don't need to be fingerprinted 4 times a year. It's excessive. No, nothing. No other industry, not even gambling, alcohol, require that level of diligence and background certification and checks. It's entirely unnecessary.
Does your government card say licensed prostitute?
Thankfully, it no longer does. Ours, I want to say now, says courtesan on it.
Oh, cool. Cool. If it's possible, Alice, do you think you could Photoshop your PII out of your personally identifiable
Um,
information and provide? If not, it's okay.
I'd
I
rather
or
not.
could you just somehow crop the legal
If I,
courtesan?
what I can do is I can put a piece of paper over it
Sure.
just so you get the title.
See the legal
Reason,
courtesan. Yeah.
yeah. Reason being, and this is important for anybody listening, any sex workers, blurring pictures does not permanently blur pictures. People can unblur images. So that is not a safe way to protect your identity online. So if you
Good to
are
know.
wanting to not have your face on the internet, blurring your face will not keep your face off the internet. Literally, you need to go through the effort of hiding your face through your pose, through a hat, through something. A blur is not good enough. Safety note. Safety note.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. This is what this is
Yeah, it's
about. This is what this is all
one of
about.
those obscure little interesting things to be aware of because you never know who's a crazy person on the internet.
Yeah. You're a wealth of knowledge on these topics. What are some other things that I guess maybe that we haven't brought up with regard to legalization that we might consider? I feel like we've touched on a lot of points, but we just got kind of granular on licensing. Any other thoughts on this?
I think the benefit to local counties and communities when it comes to having brothels is really important to touch on. In some communities, particularly within rural Nevada, up to 30% of their overall discretionary budget sometimes comes from the resulting fees from these Nevada brothels. They literally are supporting and carrying some of these small towns that otherwise would not be able to afford amenities such as new police cars, ambulances, to be able to invest in their schools, whatever they're using that discretionary budget for. So I think that there's a real benefit to having more brothels in America in the sense that it will generate tax dollars, which are only going to turn around and benefit the local communities. In fact, I'd go so far as to suggest and propose something like an excise tax, not an excessive amount, just like a small percent amount that is charged to the person who is purchasing, like 1 or 2%, that then automatically goes back to like that local community as like a community improvement investment, whatever fund. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, and it's another parallel that reminds me of cannabis, where they devote some towards like education or whatever, the tax money, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it exists within society. It has existed within society. Sex work is not new. Nevada brothels were only legislated in the 1970s in reaction to brothels throughout America being shuttered elsewhere. Brothels have been with us since the earliest days of America, oftentimes literally at the forefront as we were expanding west. Brothels and madams were such an inherent part of how the West was won and developed and the culture and how the miners were enticed out to these locations to obtain the minerals that paid for our roads and railways that allowed us to become the nation that we are. I mean, it all goes back in history. Like it's nothing new. And it's so important that we really recognize and honor that history rather than stigmatize and shame something that clearly has been with us forever. Like it's not called the world's oldest profession for no reason.
Yeah. And what do you think about the idea of just in terms of talking about what an ideal model would be? Some people have felt and described that maybe they didn't have I don't I guess what the proposal they suggested is like some sort of sex worker bill of rights. And it's this idea that I don't know if they exist anymore, but there were like lockdown brothels back in the day. I've heard that they're like not so much of a thing anymore, but that they still
No,
maybe are. Oh, okay.
not really. So
But can you
the
describe what I just, for folks have no idea what I'm just talking about? Can you describe that, please?
Yes, in certain counties, the legislation was written in a way that essentially caused a sex worker's medical clearance to expire if she left the brothel premises for more than 24 hours, essentially requiring the sex worker to remain on the brothel premises for the entire duration of her tour, whether that be 7 days, 2 weeks. Because if she were to leave, go home, her clearance would then expire and she would have to pay the expense and then also have all of that time that she would be unable to work. So situationally, legislation caused brothels to have policies that required the workers to remain on location. Ironically, just before the entire nation went into lockdown, the lockdown policies as they existed within legislation were actually overturned in Nye County, and now the clearance remains for the full 7 or up to 10 days if that worker is only working up to a 10-day period. If she is continuing to work the next week, she has to clear every 7 days. But like technicalities aside, anyway, it's every 7 days essentially that we are required to be tested and not required to stay on the premise. Thank God, because that was ridiculous and unnecessary.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that maybe goes with that, and I don't know, maybe it doesn't. One of the things I've heard is just in the spirit of sex worker bill of rights, like the idea of they felt they had to sleep pretty. Have you heard of that?
Um, it depends on where you work again. Some locations have shifts. Some
Sure.
locations you could work an AM shift or a PM shift. So if you're working an overnight shift, and I suppose if you want to go to sleep, I guess then yeah, you're gonna have to be some form of ready to work your
It's
shift.
kind of like being a firefighter, you sleep on site and when the bell rings, you get up, right?
It,
Think about that.
essentially,
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, it's a good
Now,
analogy.
where I work, essentially you are available 24/7 during the time that you are there on location if you choose to be.
Mm,
All you need to do is say the magic words, "Hi, I'm going to sleep and taking myself off the floor. I'll see you when I wake up. Good night." And that's it. Congratulations, you're off the floor. Go to bed. Go get a full night's sleep. Go take your makeup off, take your heels off. Like, chill, sleep, good night. Like, you can certainly work and have the opportunity to make money all night long if you so choose. But I mean, you don't have to sleep in your makeup. Plenty of girls show up to line up quite literally in some like cute little PJ thing and like some shoes that they just slipped into that they had sitting in the hallway.
yeah.
Like, it's very much so subjective, in my opinion, to what your attitudes are regarding the experience, in the sense that it is a work location. You are there to make money. You
Right.
make money when people come in through the door. Most ladies are available for something called a lineup, which means that a guest has walked into the ranch that does not have an appointment, is not sure who they want to see, and would like to see all the various ladies that are available to potentially choose a lady to then go on tour with and then book with. So if a lady is not at lineup, it significantly minimizes her ability to make money. So it certainly behooves the lady to be within that space and attend the lineup.
Right.
Now, again, every location is different. Where I am, I work by appointment only. I don't like to do lineups, so I don't do lineups. I don't like to see random people. I prefer people to email me first. I much prefer to get a sense of who someone is and what kind of a connection they're looking for, because I don't offer every single service. Contrary to popular belief, sex workers say no, and oftentimes will say no. For me, who someone is extremely important. So I care about who I see. I want to be treated with respect and kindness. I want someone that is going to value and appreciate my time, not treat me like an object. And so when I'm communicating with somebody over email, I'm able to get a sense if someone's going to be a good fit for me. So I don't do lineups really
Yeah.
anymore. I could if I want to, but I'm certainly not required to. And the ranch has never pressured me into doing a lineup. They're just kind of let me be an independent contractor, which is a good thing. And that's how it should be.
Right. And that's kind of where I was asking my question from, is that I feel that, and I think it's the idea that, I mean, you're kind of an exception in that, like, yeah, I don't feel like you have to do bookings. And I think everybody can get to your status. I'm not saying that that's not possible.
I don't
Um,
know. It's one of those things where it's nice to think that
sure.
it's possible for everyone, but I also think it's really important here that we acknowledge a few like societal stigmas and unfair biases and advantages. Like if you look at the brothels overall, put all the brothel lineups, every single lady from all of the ranches into one giant lineup. And then if you were to order that lady, all the ladies in order of their skin tone, it would be a mighty, mighty white lineup.
Oh,
A very, very blonde haired, blue eyed white lineup. It is important to note that because there absolutely is some hiring disparity that happens within the industry as a whole, where the workers within the industry do not truly represent the cross section of sex workers in America. That is a result of biased hiring practices, a result of a biased market. I mean, you certainly cannot control racism within the purchasers themselves, but we certainly should have more fair hiring practices within the brothels. So I don't necessarily think it's safe to say that everybody can achieve that status, because not everyone is truly given a fair opportunity. Some ladies aren't even given the opportunity to walk through the door in the first place. So there's lots of barriers that need to be overcome for there to be the true potentiality for anyone to see this level of success.
Yeah. Thank you for addressing that. And I guess just to wrap up the topic of Bill of Rights, any other thoughts on that? I mean, I guess the last thing I'll add is somebody said, like, there's no place you can call really, like, to file a complaint, for example. Like, there's not, like, I don't imagine there's an HR department at the brothel. You know what I mean? And so, like, what do you think about?
It would depend on the size of the brothel as far as
Sure.
HR
I
goes.
don't mean to assume. That was a pretty broad assumption.
Generally speaking, each location has a different manager. And also, I think it's important to note here that it is a very large and diverse industry. If one location is truly not working for you, go work at a different house. Go apply and work at a different house. Seriously. I think it is so important that ladies in this industry do not have fear around changing brothels until they find a location that is the best fit and the correct fit for them, because every location is different. Everyone has different rules and management styles and preferences and clientele and price points and features. I mean, there's such diversity within this industry that you really have to be willing to go and explore the industry and find what's going to work best for your business model and which location is going to be the best fit for you. Like, it would sure be nice that if every time we had a conflict with work, that there was some like magic reporting agency that would make all of our work problems go away. But I mean, I don't even think within like a traditional corporate hierarchy structure can you just like not like your manager and just magic away that conflict
True.
through HR. Like
True.
That's not how that works, unfortunately. Like, if there are true dangerous violations, you would report those to the sheriff. That is who you would reach out to if there is a true dangerous violation. Now, if there's an interpersonal conflict, I mean, like, you got to be an adult at a certain point here. This is not the 13th grade. We are all adults here, and this is the brothel, and we are here to make money, not bicker with each other. This isn't competitive. It's complementary, and everybody is here with the same goal in mind, which is that everybody wants to be as successful as they possibly can and not push others down to be successful. We want to raise others up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I guess that's the one that I think I'm glad you addressed that, because some people have described, like, instead of there being like an abundance mindset, some women have a scarcity mindset, and it's important to have an abundance mindset because you can literally upsell people like it's business, you know, like use your new friends to your advantage, you know.
Oh yeah. Yes,
So
you get so much further ahead by collaborating and working together. Always, 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 especially in this industry.
yeah. Well, so I honestly wanted to wrap up with some questions that admittedly I think are tough, but I think that we can take them on. I think that, you know, you being the front runner, like I view you as like kind of the leader of sex work, legalization of sex work in America. So I think that it's easy to take this one on, and I'll even take a swing at it too. But I've heard that some people attribute to your success is like your name's Alice Little, and some people have the appeal that like you're kind of like, you look younger, and I'd be happy to take a swing at that, but would you like to, because you're Alice Little?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a very frequent misconception. I mean, I'm 33 years old, very proud about my age. I'm 4'8". I am petite. And the reality is that if you take the time to listen to me for even just a moment, my age is exceptionally clear.
Mm-hmm.
There is no hearing and seeing me move and speak in real time and mistaking me for a child. So some people like to use that as the, oh, Alice is successful because she's young, she's tiny. Great. I'm sorry. I thought this supposed like stereotype is that sex workers were supposed to be successful because they're blonde with big boobs and like long hair and like voluptuous bodies. And yet, hello, I'm 4'8" with red curly hair. Like I am here literally defying the stereotypes. So why in the world are you now trying to find a different stereotype to define my success as? Like, just get over it. Like, I'm successful because I work ridiculously damn hard at this industry. That's why.
Yeah. Feel free to call me out if my response to that criticism is insensitive, but here's my response. Would you rather they fuck Alice Little or a kid?
I mean,
Like, if
also
that's the appeal, I'm
um,
just saying if that is the appeal, like since you're small, let's just acknowledge that.
yeah.
Like you look young. I wouldn't have guessed you're
Oh yeah.
what'd you say, 33? I wouldn't have guessed that.
Oh yeah. No, people
So I
never
ask,
get. I am routinely carded, and I see it as a compliment. My trick, by the way, ladies, sunscreen, sunscreen, and more sunscreen. Walk around with a little parasol and don't be ashamed of being pale. It's cool. You don't need to get a tan. Totally cool. I mean, like, uh, the reality
I
is,
get my point
like,
is kind of edgy or whatever, but do you get what
yeah,
I'm
it's
saying?
edgy, but also it's like I also don't accept age play requests. That's one of the things
Oh, okay.
on my
That's kind of what I
no
was
list.
asking too. I was gonna like
Yeah.
ask
Like
that
I don't
directly,
even
but
offer anything
okay.
like that. If somebody were to reach out to me and they're like, I want to do an age play related fantasy, whatever thing, and if they want a specific age stated, no. I'll do like a sexy schoolgirl role
Mhm.
play all day, every day. Like there's a fine line where role playing. We can do role play, but I'm never going to do like specific underage play in any way, shape, or form. That's not a service that I offer. Are there ladies in the industry that offer that? Totally. Good for them. That's great. They can consent to whatever they want to, and there's nothing wrong with those services.
Yeah.
I just choose to not offer those services because it's not something that I'm interested in. Not because I can't offer those services or not because I shouldn't offer
Mhm.
those services. I just don't happen to offer those services. So, like, I mean, even if somebody wanted that thing from me, it's not like it's something that they could get from me anyway. So it's like, well, I don't see how that attributes to my success if I'm literally telling everyone who's like, oh, can you pretend to be a minor? I'm like, no, I won't. Goodbye. Like that. If anything, that doesn't help my success at all, actually.
Yeah, I was
Kind of
gonna say.
funny. I don't
Right.
know. It's really funny though, because it's always like the perception versus reality. And it's one of those things where when you are viewing somebody from the outside and you're trying to make conclusions about something, you're focusing on the wrong aspect of things. It's like, why are you trying to find a reason as to why I'm successful? Why can I not just be successful? Why do you need to explain away my success? Is it so wrong for me to be a successful sex worker and be making a bunch of money? Is there a problem for a sex worker to be making a lot of money? Because I really think that's the underlying issue here for most people. It's not the fact that I look young. The underlying issue here still comes back to the same thing. Is it really okay for this woman to be making so much money being a sex worker?
Yeah.
Is this okay? She looks so young. Can she really choose to do this? Heck yeah, I can. I am 33 years old. Absolutely, I can choose to do this, and there's not a darn thing wrong with it.
Yeah. And thank you again for addressing that because I know that it's discuss but I had to ask it because it is one of the questions, that I've heard and that we even received, because when I said Alice Little's coming on the show, people sent messages, and so that's where that one question came from earlier, and that's where that question comes from. So,
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's funny because it's like, okay, we exist in a world where one of the most frequently searched like porn terminologies is like teen. And there are quite literally 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in porn. I am 33 years old. If somebody really is looking for like the barely legal effect, there are women in this industry that really genuinely and truly are that. Like, if that's somebody's fantasy, I mean, are there 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that work within some Nevada brothels? Not at the Chicken Ranch. You have to be 21 and up at the Chicken Ranch. But at other brothels, absolutely you can work in a brothel at the age of 18, 19, or 20. So, like, if that was the thing that somebody wanted, again, they would just be going to the person that's the thing. Like, I don't know. It's so funny to me the way that people try to justify and explain it away.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, there are a lot of internet stalkers that are out there on the internet. And
I think that's probably the one thing that the old in the 80s that was better about the brothels is that you didn't have the internet to harass the sex workers, you know?
constant stalking, harassing, doxing. I'm going to out you to your parents. I'm going to post your address online. I'm going to follow you home from work. And unfortunately, there are crazies on the internet who do follow through with those things.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, I mean, it really speaks as to why sex workers deserve respect, why sex workers need protection, and why legislation around sex work is so incredibly important. Because there are people out there that don't like sex work. There are people out there that don't like empowered women.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are people out there that will do whatever it takes. Just interestingly enough, in the news today, there is a politician from the Democratic Party that was found on Chatterbait with her partner. I guess her opponent stumbled across her old account and decided that he was going to dox her, out her, and try and make her ineligible for office for doing something that is perfectly legal to do, using a website that literally thousands of Americans use. But what I really want to know is, how did he find that? Was he not on that website himself? Was he not
right
the very material that he had an issue with this particular person? Like,
that's a really good point. That is a really good point. What do you think the future looks like in terms of legalization in America? Do you think anybody else is going to do what Nevada has done? Like, who do you think? I heard something like New York just decriminalized, maybe, or something.
Not quite,
No.
unfortunately. So, like, there's a lot of differences between decriminalization and partial decriminalization, which is called the Nordic model. The Nordic model is, I think it was Maine just passed the Nordic model. The Nordic model essentially says that sex work itself, we're not going to criminalize, but if you buy and like purchase, criminalize. That is criminalized. Unfortunately, some counties have DA specific non-legislation, but like localized policies where, say, the DA of Manhattan says, I will not prosecute consensual sex work. That's great. The second that DA is gone, a new DA is going to come in, and what's going to stop them from turning around and now prosecuting consensual sex work? It's not real legislative policy that changes anything. And New York does have a DA who has taken the stance that, oh, I'm not going to prosecute consensual sex workers. However, it's not real policy. It's not like substantive change.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, hey, I feel like I've taken a lot of your time. Anything that you wanted to say as we wrap up, just on all these topics that we've discussed?
I would say that it's interesting for people to take a look at the history of sex work, not just within America, but the history of sex work as it exists overall within America, just generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So sex work has been with us since quite literally the dawn of time. When we look at legislation such as Hammurabi's Code, which is the earliest form of legal documentation anywhere, it talks about sex work. It talks about the treatment specifically of sex workers and how they should be regarded within society. When we look back at the pillars of power within society, we look back at kings, at ruler, at all of these people that were in command. And oftentimes the people who were by their side were sex workers, courtesans, mistresses by another name. I mean, we all know that people of power throughout history have had various companions. And that is still true to this day, though the business model, of course, has changed in the sense that it is now, of course, much more advantageous for women to be in that position.
Yeah, it always seems like the politicians that are bitching about prostitutes that are caught in a hotel with prostitutes.
It's very,
or sex workers, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because it's like they have the option of going to a brothel where it's completely safe, discreet. A lot of the appeal for certain people is that, like, the edge appeal. And I think it's important to talk about this because this is like the cool factor that, like, some people, for whatever reason, decide to assign to the sex work industry. It's the sexy factor, where they want it to have this, like, dangerous edge to it. For them, that's part of the fun, the excitement, the fact that they're being a little bit naughty. Ooh, I'm being edgy. And, like, okay, that's great, but you can actually just, like, pretend those things. For sex workers, it's not like, ooh, I'm being edgy. Like, for independent sex workers, they're literally putting themselves at risk every time they go to work. Like, it's not this cool, sexy, edgy thing. We actually need legislation to remove that, like, edginess. It's sexy enough on its own. The edge, we don't need that. That doesn't need to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, I apologize for interjecting with that anecdote. I appreciate you taking it on. I wanted to hold my promise and give you the space of allowing you to close out the show with whatever you feel is important. You were talking about some education. I apologize again for interjecting.
Oh, no, it's all good. So, like, the educational side of things, when it comes to sex work, the history of sex work, and the value of sex work is something that we really haven't touched on. Like, well, who sees sex workers? Well, everybody sees sex workers, not just people who are tremendously successful, but people of all walks of life come to see sex workers, including people who feel that they can't have access to intimacy in other places. Many people that choose to come and see sex workers are folks that are disabled, folks that are married and want to explore bisexuality, but they're in, like, a heteronormative relationship, so they can't do that, and they feel like they can't date a woman, and so they might come to a brothel. Maybe they're a couple and they want to try swinging, but swinging is scary, and they want to work with somebody who's experienced for the first time. Maybe somebody is autistic and they really want to go super, super duper slowly and be able to, like, stop and start the whole experience on demand and have somebody that's just going to, like, really understand where they're coming from and create, like, a really sensory friendly environment and a positive experience and not make it too overwhelming. Cool. All those people see sex workers. All of them. Every last one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, Alice, I just want to thank you again for your time. TheAliceLittle.com.
Yes.
Cool. You'll probably find all your social media and everything from there, right? OnlyFans, be able to book, all that good stuff.
Yes, I have all of my official links sent in there. And of course, if you want to reach me personally, the best way is going to be by email. Alice Little at thealicelittle.com.
Awesome. Well, Alice, thank you so much for your time. And folks, I hope you found as much value in this conversation as I did. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.